Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and get our meeting started right on time. Let's go ahead and call this morning meeting to order. Stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Jody Thompson, board member.
Ryan Cristelli, board member.
Amy Bailey, board member.
Bernadette Bauer, board member.
Chris Nesmith, superintendent.
Candace Goldsmith, staff.
Eric Smith, staff.
Lisa Arnold, staff.
Jeff Monroe, staff.
Can I get a motion for Stephanie for her excused absence, please?
I'll make a motion to excuse Stephanie Smith from this board meeting.
I'll second it.
Been a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Approval of the board meeting minutes for November 23rd, 2021 and for December 9th of 2021.
I make a motion that we approve the board meetings minutes for November 23rd, 2021 and December 9th, 2021.
I'll second that.
It's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Letters. We have a retirement letter and a hire letter.
Sorry, balancing my monitors. We have Debbie Gallion, just letting us know that she's notifying that she'll be retiring on December 31st, 2021, and how much she's enjoyed working with us and our students for the last 14 years. And then I have Eileen. We just want to recommend Eileen Rodriguez for the be approved to fill the posted 6.5-hour high school special education paraprofessional position. She's been working as a long-term sub in this position for several months, and she's jumping in and willing to do any assignment given to her by her assigned teacher. She has 15 years experience working as a para and alternative education within the juvenile correction setting in California. She has training experience in a variety of restorative programs, PBIS, Common Core Curriculum, ABA, and SELF, and she has demonstrated that she is willing to work independently, stay engaged with her students, and ask for direction or support when needed. The hiring team of Emily Busey and Stacy Rocky requested that the board approve the hiring of Eileen Rodriguez for this position with the start date of 12/13/21.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I'll move for the approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
There's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Approval of vouchers. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I tried to skip right through that, didn't I? Discussion items.
Right, so the very first one we have is the fundraiser approval process, and I don't have a presentation because this was a conversation that our board members posed, and I wanted to open it up. When it comes down to, we're required to have copies of the nonprofit status and maintenance of our booster clubs and how booster clubs run through us. I think all of our booster clubs run through on a nonprofit like 501c3 and many of them, some have found that if they have a 501c3, they can operate independently of the district. We currently approve all their fundraisers. I think wanted to point out one of the big ones that we have is we do retain ownership of all use of our facilities and the ownership of our copyright of the Elma School District. And those are two key areas that we do retain ownership of in our management of our property and our property rights. So I guess the big thing is I just wanted to make sure that we had a moment for the board to kind of discuss the philosophy and where we want to be on approving these. And I just wanted to be responsive to the questions the board had asked. So the kind of reference the question was, why do we approve all of the fundraisers that are every fundraiser that our booster clubs do? So, and I do want to add that the two areas that we do retain majority of control on, I guess I should say the three, is if they're using our facilities, if they're using our public image, and the third one would be if they are needing to run accounts through us because they do not have a 501c3 or a position to retain their own banking accounts, which I don't think many of our boosters fit into that. None of our boosters fit into that category, but that is not an uncommon practice, but that would be the third reason.
Okay. So we're talking about this because it's in regard to really getting down to the brass tacks of if they're not using those three things you listed, there really isn't a need for us to be doing that.
I shouldn't say there's not a need. I should more say we don't have a lot of recourse if we don't approve
Okay.
it. If we don't approve it and they do it anyway, we wouldn't have a lot of recourse.
So Chris, just to clarify, we don't have a procedure or a policy saying that they have to bring all their fundraisers to us. It's just kind of been a past practice thing that's been done
Yes.
and carried forward.
We can't,
So-
it's been a past practice that we've been doing.
Right. So my understanding for boosters too is, yes, we're responsible, or, we are in charge of the facilities and the copyright, things like that. But as far as what a booster does, they pretty much do what they do as a booster. They're not associated with the district because, of course, the minute they say we're part of the district or the high school or something, then it becomes ASB, which they don't want to do.
And there's
Oh, I
kind of
see.
this, they're giving us money. So they raise money and then they are giving our ASB accounts money. Then we do have to be clear on how we're taking that money.
Right.
If they're providing a service or activity. So there is some issue on how we exchange the money. So my recommendation would be, without action, we shore up the booster club request on, is it a request to use our public image, our copyright? Is it a request to use our facilities? And then is there a request to transfer money to the Elma School District? Is there an exchange of funds? The impetus is this was historically to keep boosters from taking activities away from our ASB groups. And I think I don't think that would prohibit us, because one of the things is, again, we still retain ownership of our copyright, our public image, and we still retain ownership of our facilities. And that should always remain our top priority, that our ASB groups have first right access to our copyright image, and our ASB groups have first right access to our facilities. Jamie, you unmuted. I'm curious on your thoughts.
I got a lot of them running 100 miles an hour. When you say our copyright, wouldn't most of the boosters that I'm thinking of are all for school activities, our groups, mostly our athletic groups. I know that there are a few academic ones out there. When we're out there in the public fundraising, these groups are pretty clear that it's the parent boosters fundraising, but it's specific for Elma High School football or Elma High School boys basketball or the equestrian team. So we're still putting our name on it.
Yeah, I think we can actually approve the use of our public image and how our public image is being used.
So,
Go
so
ahead,
are we
Jody.
just getting to the fact that, yeah, if somebody, forms a booster, like every class every year, forms a new class of, what are we up to, 2028 now? They still have to come, let the district know that they have formed this and do all the paperwork. We just don't necessarily have to approve every fundraiser that's out there. They just have to make sure and follow the guidelines that when they're doing fundraisers, they're saying this is a booster fundraiser to support the class or the group. But the board doesn't have to say, yes, we approve you selling t-shirts and, doing the concessions and doing all the other stuff.
Maybe. So that's a great point. You asked the question on t-shirts, right? So if they're using an Elma logo on the t-shirts or advertising something on Elma, I think we still have a public image we need to maintain and how those are being done. So my recommendation is that we deny or approve, but we modify the form on how Elma School District will be represented within those approvals. Are you using our image? Are you using this? Because Jamie makes a great point, right? If it's football boosters are almost inherently using an Elma image, right? So do we actually go through that process on how that public image is being approved? Because we still own the copyright of that image, and we should have a say in how our copyright is being used. And we should go back through our board policy on how our logo and our branding is approved, right?
Yeah,
No, so make sure that we're shoring up our board policy, and we're making sure we're shoring up on the approval. I do feel the bulk of our boosters are making use of our public image. And I just wanted to round out. So I don't think we should make a recommendation that we eliminate the approval. I think we should just be really clear on what we actually are approving, which is we're approving the use of our public image. And we're approving the competitiveness on how that's going to be used against our own ASB groups. And our own ASB groups have first right to our facilities and to our public image.
okay, that makes
Chris,
sense.
what about the competitiveness between booster groups? I mean, I think that the reason, as far as I've known for all these years, that the board has approved them kind of keeping tabs on who's doing what, so no other group steps on another's toes, so we don't have 3 groups selling flip-flops or t-shirts at the same time as like I don't know, as an ASB group, like the FFA right now, if the class of 22 was to be selling t-shirts also against the ASB, the FFA, it's kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Trying to make sure that everybody doesn't step on each other's toes.
Agreed. And I think we can only police it with teeth to a point. If they're doing non-Elma related Hawaiian shirt sales as a just complete, I'm trying to think of the most random thing I could think of that has absolutely nothing to do with anything we can control. I don't know if we can get into actually manage. If we deny that, they might still be able to walk in and do it, but at a certain point, it's only to their own detriment. Then when you're both occupying the same space. I do think that we want to give priority to our own ASB groups, and where I guess I would say our own ASB groups would have the competitive edges. They would have first right to our facilities, our copyright, our public image. So Jamie, I think I agree with you. I just want to make sure I approach how we do it from the most, like, what do we have the most legal authority over? And then, and if we're in agreement with that, then I'll begin review evaluating our board policies on our logo, on our image, on our branding, and on our facilities. And then we'll look at how we're doing that, and then look at our ASB approval, our booster approvals on how we're approving their use. If it's something like completely too out of the context, fundraisers that booster clubs are doing, I guess my short answer is that would almost be on them because they're stepping on each other's toes.
Right.
I think wholeheartedly across the board, they've had a mutual respect, the boosters have, of not running the same type of fundraisers and whatnot at the same time, although it can happen. I don't know how much, like Chris says, I don't know how much control we have over that. legally. But I do believe it's worth reviewing our board policy and making it clear of our expectations for what we are approving. And you're right, most of the things that we would approve, they are having use of our facilities or our public image, namely those two things with the rarity of the exchange of funds. Ryan, do you have any thoughts on that?
I kind of agree with Chris that we should only control what we can control. And, and I do think that booster clubs, like I was involved with the Elma Wrestling Club, but that was a true club. And they, from the youth program through high school age kids, all participated in that one booster club. And that money could be used for whatever areas that booster club decided to use the money for. So it wasn't necessarily the Elma High School Wrestling Club per se, boosters. And so I think booster clubs do need to be careful on how they're promoting themselves. Yes, some groups that might only benefit the high school groups, but it has to be for a booster group, has to be the parents, and it can't be an Elma High School booster club.
Mm.
And so, yeah, and I don't want to be voting on things that, despite what the board's feelings are, people can go and do whatever they want anyways. And I really have no control over that.
I understand. And I think as of late, like with my boys, their booster club is labeled, the class of 2025 parent booster club. That's actually the name. There's the only reference is the class that they're in, not to the high school. So I think it's worth our review of policy procedure, our expectation. If we don't have a procedure or process, or we do, and it's just very vague, then maybe it's time that we revise that and talk about what that should look like.
We will review board policy on our public use, our facilities. We'll review board policy on our public image, our rights to our branding. And if we don't have them, we might be coming forward with new board policies, and then we'll see how those intersect with the approval. And then I think, like I said, I don't think this removes us from the approval process. It really just clarifies exactly what we are approving. We're approving your ability to carry the image of the Elma School District.
Yeah, because I definitely don't want to police booster clubs. And if there is some competition between two competing booster clubs over a certain fundraiser, I mean, that's something that I think that they should be working out amongst themselves, because personally, I think if you run two competing fundraisers and you're competing against one of each other, both booster clubs are actually ultimately going to suffer. So, hopefully they continue to work together to provide different fundraising opportunities out there.
Okay.
I can
Does
just,
anyone else?
doesn't take action. I can function with the recommendation of the board.
Okay.
No vote necessary. It would be, you'll vote when the board policy comes up.
Okay. Presentations for the RFP. So I think we're going to start with, are we going to start with OAC?
I believe so. Candace, are you still on our meeting? I know you're trying to get to your daughter's concert.
Yes, Stephen from OAC is first.
And can he share his
Okay,
screen if he needs it?
Stephen Murakami. Okay, there he is. Hi, good evening.
Hi, everyone. Hey, just a quick question. I see that Cezanne and CBRE are here as well. Are we all going to be presenting together in the same room?
In short, I mean, we can ask Cezanne and CBRE Huey to kind of step out and then come back. So then that way they're not preloaded with your information.
We don't mind going first and sharing. So however you want to handle it, we're prepared to go.
Okay. I've done this before where, granted, I've done this before in person where someone's not sitting at a computer and adjusting their presentation. So doing this remotely is new for me, but the way I've done it before is I've had all three bids in the same room with essentially in a real public board. I mean, I haven't done this since before COVID, candidly, and they can't really edit their presentation because we're all sitting there. But if you'd like us to make adjustments because of this COVID world, feeling like someone's sitting at their computer and adjusting their presentation, we could make adjustments. But if you feel good, we can probably just go forward as normal.
The one way I've done it in this virtual world is we've been put in breakout rooms.
Okay.
And then we all kind of are in our individual spaces. But if we want to just roll with it, it's up to you. We'll go whichever way you want.
And
I know
I'll
Joel
chime
Davis
in-
really well. He's a really good guy.
I'll chime in as well. Steve and Brian and I and CBRE, we all work together. I'm fine rolling with it.
We're fine, and we actually have one member on the road, so you can have confidence, Steve, that nothing's changing. So we're happy to have you sit through. We'll sit through it.
All right.
Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and let Steve go ahead and take the floor.
Awesome. Can you see my screen? I'm sharing a Miro background.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. I'm not sure who's starting the clock, but just want to make sure we honor the 10 minutes. So first, just super excited and honored to be here. We think we'd be a really good fit for you. We offer an interdisciplinary approach to the work we do, and we use a lot of data to drive our processes. And so we're excited to share with you our scope of services. We do long-range planning, bond planning, design and construction management, and post-occupancy evaluations. And so no matter where you are in your process, we can help you with vision, we can help you with ed specs, we can help you with quality control. For the three of us here, Ashley McLaren and Brian Ho, we all have over 20 years of experience. We live, breathe all things K-12. I'm the current executive chair of OSPI's Technical Advisory Committee, and so I help to oversee all the new school rules. I'm also the Washington chapter governor of A4LE, and so that's the organization that brings architects, engineers, and school district folks together. And so I sit on the chapter, regional, and just recently left the international board of directors. Ashley and I have both had a unique experience of coming from the architectural side, being the owner then, and being the steward of the process, and then now being consultants. Whereas Brian has dedicated over 20 years and is a principal of a really prestigious Tacoma firm. And so we would be launching this work to support you out of our Olympia office with Brian out of Tacoma. I'd like to thank Candace for giving us ICOS access as we did a quick deep dive into the information available through OSPI. And so I'd ask Brian to just give you a quick overview of kind of what we saw at first glance, and we'll start there.
All right, sounds good. Steve, if you go to that first slide there. So as Steve mentioned, we did some digging into the current ICOS information that was available. Of course, we know that this is kind of a snapshot of what's available today, but we've been going through a pandemic over the last couple of years. And so some of this information may look a little bit different today and going forward. This gives us some really good background data, as Steve mentioned, using data to help us make good decisions for the future. But it's really just the starting point in a process of getting to know who you are and what your needs are. Steve, if you go to the next slide, the last demographic study that was completed, it showed continued growth over the next 6 years. Again, what has the pandemic done to that? Is that still the case? But we can see, you're already relying on some portables. You mentioned in the RFQ that capacity was an issue. And so doing a comparative analysis of current building capacity and current and projected enrollment, certainly one of the things that we would want to be focusing on with this work. And then next slide there, Steve, we looked at the age of your buildings, trying to get an idea where the biggest needs were. It looks like that the high school buildings, a lot of them are still well within the life cycle that we would expect, but some of the older elementary, middle school buildings may have more pressing needs. In any case, right now, it'd be beneficial to do, a thorough review of all major system needs throughout buildings in your district, find where and prioritize where those most emergent needs are. And so in reviewing also your condition assessment documents through ICOS, it did look like you've been doing a good job taking care of your buildings. A lot of good and fair scores, which is great news, but we know there's also some major needs. And so we want to work with you on a process to figure out what those are. And with that, I think Ashley's going to talk a bit more about process.
Yes, so I'm going to describe a very high level linear process, and it has several steps, but they can expand and contract to meet your timeline. So first, we really dive in to try to understand your goals and the priorities of your community, and also your buildings and facilities, kind of touching on what Brian was just mentioning, but go out and do an assessment of every building. Then we develop the rules of engagement. So this is about setting up the framework for how your internal teams work, and your external teams, and all the stakeholders involved. How will you engage your community and your committee, and how we'll communicate between those two groups. So it's just a supporting framework that will, kind of set the first domino up to move forward. After that, we really dive into the data. And so we look specifically at capacity, condition, and functional performance. And so capacity is design capacity, how many students per building, and what are they designed for, and where are you with that capacity projection. Condition, as we talked about, is how are your systems performing. Functional performance is a little different. That's more about how your buildings are serving your educational curriculum. And so buildings that are older typically score a little differently there, because if a building was designed at a time when education looked really different than maybe today's standards, we'd want to go through and assess that and make sure we understand those needs too. So then after that, those kind of three-pronged assessments, we go through and we really try to take that data and make it engaging. We want everything that you show your community and your committee to be not only engaging, but transparent. That builds trust. So we're always looking at the data through a lens that's important to you and your community. And from that, we go through and decide with your committee guiding principles. So what is important to you? How do we look at your strategic goals and tie those into a system that will help us make decisions as this this process moves forward? So we'll use those guiding principles aligned with the data to really build consensus around your outcomes. And so the projects that come out of that process, we make sure that everyone walks away feeling like their voice was heard, and that their opinions were valued throughout the process. We find that a voting, a system where some people get to vote and some people don't, or some votes are louder than others, no one ever walks away feeling really fulfilled by that process. So we make sure that we are building consensus with all the data and the process as we move forward. So you'll see here that we also try to make sure we make the data applicable to your district geographically, so that we are ensuring that the analysis provides impact that is distributed appropriately. Again, going back to those guiding principles that we will develop with you and your team.
Yeah, your guys' map may be a little simpler in that it's organized across the main connector road, but I think the importance of this is understanding that we really try and not show spreadsheets of data, and that we try to make the data accessible. And for context, we have about $1.2 billion in bonds and levies going out this February for districts around the Puget Sound. And that could be the 425 million of North Shore, or the 300 million at Lake Washington, or the 12 million at Quilcene. We are able to take the context and the tools that we develop for these gigantic districts and bring them down and harness and leverage those to work with the smaller districts. And quite frankly, working with the Quilcenes and the Rochesters is the best way. We love it because it connects us to small town community. It connects us to people. There's less politics. There's less. It's more about the students, and that's an exciting place. That when Ashley and Brian and I were talking about pursuing this work, we were really excited at that opportunity. I'm gonna stop sharing for a quick sec here. We've got a couple minutes left, and I just want to share that you asked us to talk about our services, our timeline, and estimated costs. The timeline, not knowing exactly how deep and how far and what timing you're thinking about going for your next bond or levy measure, or if this is just the long range plan that's really going to identify those gaps for future planning. We're totally scalable. We're all available to start immediately and work within the context of Elma specifically. As far as cost goes, not knowing, how deep you want to dive into data, how many kind of public meetings you want to facilitate, I can tell you that these types of projects are lost leaders for us. We never make money on them. We usually lose, but it's an opportunity to build a strategic partnership with you all. And so that hopefully down the road, if you need construction management or design services, we're there and a trusted strategic partner for you all to lean into for the bigger processes. And so that being said, we've been working with Quilcene. We went in with a $30,000 proposal. That's really probably a $70,000 or $80,000 scope of work that we're not going to ask any more money for. And we've been at their carnivals, their community fairs, and Brian and I have been leading their community build nights and taking every opportunity to meet with the public. So we're out there at least once a week. And like I said, it's not about the money on these types of scopes. It's about helping you guys build trust with your community, understand where you're going to go, and hopefully influence you into thinking about how facilities can actually facilitate a modern 21st century experience for your students to make them, ready for their next step. And so with that, I hope you take away that we're really passionate, we're knowledgeable, we represent all sides of the table for you, and we'd be excited to partner with you. So I think that's 10 minutes and 7 seconds. So I'm going to stop it there.
Thank you
Steve,
so
thank
much.
you. And that was kind of our previous conversation, Steve, is we need to define the scope of work, but I would say it would look probably pretty comprehensive because we're kind of going ground up, first time, laying it all out, studying every kind of nook and cranny and piece, and then pairing that with essentially the instructional focus of the district. So
That's fantastic.
I think so just knowing it would be hard to define a cost.
Yeah. And we are excited to work with you, and our cost models for helping predict costs in this unprecedented time. We've been watching bids and tracking results across the Puget Sound in your backyard, understanding what the cost is, and having all of us with architectural backgrounds can really help focus on the potential of your sites and understand what we can do and what's needed. So.
Are you okay taking a couple of clarifying questions from our board?
Definitely.
Jody, Ryan, Jamie, Bernadette, any questions?
It's a lot of information, and the idea of being able to see more data, obviously we're a very data-driven board. I don't know that I have a question right at this moment. I think it's going to take a little time to soak in everything. I appreciate your approach tonight, and I don't know if anyone else has a question. Jody, I don't know if you do. Okay, Brian, Jamie.
Hey, Steve, on the work that you did with the Rochester School District,
yes,
on the scope of work there, do you recall, well, A, how long ago was that? And two, like a rough estimate, if you remember, on cost?
The cost came in, the original purchase order was granted at $40,000. We started with a long range master plan that evolved into bond planning. And unfortunately, that $55 million bond didn't pass. But we set them up with at least a 20-year look ahead at where all their facilities were and how they're performing. It's kind of embarrassing, but also proud at the same time to say that when I looked at the final numbers, we committed $70,000 in fee to that work because it extended past long range planning into bond planning. And they gave us a very minor change order to cover some of the deliverables. But we lost a lot on that project. But are okay with it. We built a really good partner, and they have a good foundational document that's going to lead them into the future. And hopefully we can start focusing on what we learned post voting to understand where the community wants us to adjust. So we're not going away from that one. But yeah, the exercise, we typically start off with a $30,000 or $40,000 purchase order. and then go from there and try to do our best. And one of the things that we do, we'll launch this out of Olympia, but Ashley and I are closer to Seattle. We won't charge you a dime for any time in the car, any mileage on our way. It's like we're down the street from you, and work with you that way to make your dollars stretch as far as they can.
I think part of your question, Ryan, too, was about when that work was done. So I think
right.
a lot of it was 2019. They ran that bond that Steve mentioned in February of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. And Brian worked with us on that one as well.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you guys again very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, so we'll move along to Cezanne, and I am not sure who's going to be going first, if it's Astrid or Joel.
I will share my screen here. This is Joel speaking, and it's certainly exciting to meet the school board. And I don't know if there's any citizens there, but obviously Superintendent Nesmith as well. And hopefully you can see the beginning of our PowerPoint here. And we'll try to, again, stick to 10 minutes. It's 6:36 right now. And Cezanne Environmental Services, I'm the principal, managing principal of Cezanne Environmental Services. We have 4 offices predominantly here in the Pacific Northwest. And my primary office is here in Bremerton. I was raised in Bremerton and your ultimate recidivist. I couldn't wait to get away from here when I was a kid. And then I couldn't wait to come back when I had my family, and I returned back to Bremerton in 1997. And when I left my previous firm, one of the key elements of that was being able to actually work here in Bremerton. And so you can see the old wood frame building back of me. This used to be the Sears building here in downtown Bremerton, where I used to go shopping when I was a little ankle biter. So it's kind of full circle for me, and it's exciting to be able to potentially serve school districts here in the Olympic Peninsula. It is very near and dear to me, and to be able to work and play in my backyard. And if I can get this to forward. So as managing principal, I see the facility planning process maybe from a little bit of different lens from architects and construction managers. As a former educator, I was a teacher, and teaching overseas, and then developing educational programs for Wazoo before going over to the East Coast and becoming a director of a private school. And so understanding program and how education takes place in facilities is kind of the lens that I take, and my passion for understanding programs, adjacency and learning environments. And so since 1997, when I returned, is when I became entrenched in the K-12 world, and was doing a lot of value engineering, value planning, and cost analysis for K-12 facilities throughout the Pacific Northwest. And like Steve, I've been on the technical advisory committee for OSPI since 2001 as a representative of the Society of Value Engineering. And since 2002, have kind of formalized the assessments of our learning environments. And it's that background and history and understanding cost, facilities, and how they operate in an educational context, and supporting current pedagogies here in the Pacific Northwest. And as Steve mentioned, the opportunity to serve the smaller districts are usually when we get the greatest satisfaction, because we understand how these educational facilities are the core and the heart of our communities. And so it's very near and dear to us. Astrid, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Astrid Santiago. I'll be the project manager. I have a background in engineering with the focus in sustainable built environment. So in addition to project management, I'll also be leading all the data management, analysis, visualization. We'll be showing you some of that later. I regularly facilitate subject matter expert assessment teams, whether that be for facility condition assessment, building condition assessments, accessibility, design reviews, value engineering, energy audits, most recently for Seattle Public Schools and Tumwater School District nearby. And apart from the managing capital projects, I'm also VE facilitator and lead those projects as well.
Thank you. We're obviously supported by a greater team. We have PCS Structural Solutions for the seismic component that's now required for our study and surveys with OSPI, and Andy Clunas with RC Costs, one of the predominant K-12 cost consultants in our region. I was away, I was out of country when we submitted our proposal, and so on my return, I was speaking with Bob Wolpert, who used to be the director of capital projects and facilities with the Olympia School District, and was actually with KMB, who did your last study and survey. And Bob is actually working with us now with Tumwater School District, and he is available to participate on this project as well. So I wanted to make note of that. Based in Bremerton, I'm 65, more or less, miles away from Elma, about an hour and a half away. And so I wanted to make sure that you would feel comfortable being serviced and having a consultant that is nearby and has an understanding of the communities here on the Olympic Peninsula. We tend to be more conservative, cost conscious, and wanting to look at durable, resilient material systems for long-term operations and maintenance. And I think having that appreciation is very, very important in the planning process, looking at life cycle costs and balancing that with first costs and how that is going to support your educational functions. Cezanne is also a mechanical engineering firm, and those capabilities basically represent some of the highest drivers of costs, not just in first costs of facilities, but also in operations and maintenance. When you consider the life cycle of a facility, about 60 to 70% of the total cost of ownerships is attributable to O&M, operations and maintenance, not first costs. And so having an understanding of those costs and considering those in the planning process is very, very important. In terms of all of our services, we are engaged throughout the life cycle of the facilities. We like, whether or not you want to say from cradle to grave, but from planning through design and construction, O&M, and then end of life and renewal. And having an appreciation of the context and the implications and the interrelationships of those life cycles are very, very important. And that addresses, how we operate in our facilities, how we maintain our facilities, obviously planning and the design. But the next piece that I really wanted to talk to you about is that since 2002, I've been working with Seattle Public Schools and completing their basically every 4 to 5 years, we update their facility conditions as well as their learning environment assessments. This is something that we piloted back in 2002. We went through an update process, actually with Steve when he was with the Tacoma Public Schools, to update that to be more reflective of current programming in our educational facilities. And we liked to organize this basically in 3 areas of criteria, if you will: space and capacity, configuration, and environment. And the way that we apply that is with this LEA form, which takes a look at all the 17 core program areas that we typically see in a educational, whether it's an elementary, middle, or high school facility. And being able to establish your model ed spec, if you will. I don't imagine that Elma has a current ed spec because of your facility planning process, but the way that we did this with North Kitsap School District, they had not had any recent capital program or planning process